Hello and welcome to India Tonight. I'm Karan Thapar. The CPM has published a sharp critique of the government's explanation for increasing oil prices. It questions the government's facts and attacks the government's claim that the under-recoveries of oil companies have to be compensated for. But how does the government respond, and what is the less counter to that? Those are the key issues today in a special discussion between the Chief Economic Advisor, Kaushik Basu, and the Senior Politburo member of the CPM, Sitaram Yechuri. Dr. Basu, the CPM says that between May 2009, when UPA2 was sworn in, and today, the international price of oil has increased by only $7 a barrel, which they calculate amounts to 70 paisa per litre. Yet during that same time, your government has increased the price of petrol by 6 rupees 44 paisa and the price of diesel by 4 rupees 55 paisa. How do you justify an increase that is almost 10 times the international price increase?
Right now what has been done is not really an increase. The increase was the outcome of the decision to float it. So it is not as if because international prices have risen that this price was raised, but it has for the first time, well, we have tried this earlier a little bit, but for the first time properly, the price of petrol has been put on a float and diesel is moving in that direction. When you first put something on a float, you sort of catch up with the international price. So it is not as if international prices rose, therefore this is being raised. This is something which from a fixed price has been put on a float, and the change that you saw is a catch-up. From now on, it's going to keep track of international prices.
Do you accept that argument that this is a catch-up?
No, but I just want to know the logic behind why do we need to float the prices?
Yeah.
Why do you need to peg it to international price? Are you giving an international wage to the Indian worker? If not, why are you pricing your products as international price?
I'll come to that in a moment's time, because that in a sense is the very core of your critique. But before we come to that point, do you accept the point that he's making, that this increase, which is almost 10 times the international increase between the period of May 2009 and today, is an increase that doesn't strictly reflect what's happened to the international price at that time? It reflects the need to catch up. And that catch-up has probably been a catch-up that goes much further back in time.
No, but my whole point is that why do you need to catch up? You see, and that is where I think a very big deceit is being played on the people. And because you calculate the price of the product on the basis of the costs of its production, okay, not on the cost of what the international prices are.
Let me put that query in the terms in which the CPM has raised it in the booklet that they've published. They say that the government's claim that you have to compensate oil companies for their under-recoveries on the basis of import parity pricing for refined petroleum products is actually fallacious and nonsense. They say it would be true if India was a major importer of refined petroleum products, but it's not. India imports crude oil, which it refines domestically at prices way below the international price. So why are you compensating companies for, in fact, costs that they haven't incurred?
Yeah. Karan, so the crux is that the most important ingredient in this, which is the crude, 80% of it comes from abroad. And this is where I want to respond to what Sitaram said in a moment, that there is no way you can escape the international price of crude. If it goes up, somehow or the other you're going to pay for it. Either you're going to pay for it directly by the pricing of your products, or you will pay for it out of budgetary support. So this is an imported product. This is not something being produced here. Yes, we are doing the refining ourselves, but the key ingredient is coming from abroad, and somehow or the other you have to pay international prices if international prices rise. There is no escape from that.
No, my point, Kaushik, is very correct. You pay the international price for crude. Why are you paying the international price for petrol? If I process the crude and refine it in India, it costs me roughly in the modern refineries about 1 rupee is the refining cost per litre. Now you add 1 rupee to the international price of crude and then sell it in India. Why are you increasing it by, let's say, 15 rupees to meet the international price of petrol?
The point he's making is that
yes,
Indian refining is cheaper than international refining,
yes,
yet you're paying or charging at the level of international refining, which is not a correct way to
First of all, let me tell you, Indian refining would be even cheaper if there was more space for private players to come in. It's not the most, in fact, this is by the way, but I'm coming to that in a moment. This is there in the document itself, so it's not cheap enough. Number two, there are taxes involved, and no denying in that. Petrol has quite a bit of hefty tax going into petrol. Diesel has less of a tax, but this is, after all, you have to run programs on the government's budget. You have to run an NREGA. You have to run a variety of programs, and the government has to earn from somewhere. And petrol is taxed more heavily than the other products. So there is a tax income that is coming in.
Are you satisfied with that answer? Because he's suggesting, although he hasn't said it, that there is a certain element of cross-subsidy taking place, which is why you're charging at the level of international refining, even though domestic refining is much cheaper. Are you happy with that answer?
No, not at all. Not at all. Cross subsidy, yes. I mean, I think that is a principle. Cross subsidize, have petrol more expensive and cross subsidize the other products. On that, I have no dispute. But pricing internationally as the reason for cross subsidy, that's not correct. You see, 51% of the cost of petrol in India is taxes. 30% of the cost of diesel in India is taxes. Now, the argument that the government requires revenues for its other social welfare programs, correct. Nobody is denying the government requires revenues. But where do you tax?
And why on this?
And let me, just give me a minute. I just want to pose this question. This year's budget papers reveal, Pranab Mukherjee has placed them in the parliament, that the concessions given to the corporate sector and to high income taxpayers amounts to 1,20,000 crores of rupees. Now, the revenue to be collected from the petroleum sector roughly comes to 1,20,000 rupees. Now, if you are
all the different revenues put together.
Now, if the entire revenue from the petroleum sector, 1,20,000 crores, goes as concessions to the corporate and the rich, what is the logic? What are you trying to say? You're burdening the people for giving these concessions.
Except, forgive me, you moved away from criticizing the government's explanation for raising the oil price to a slightly different attack. No. Now you're criticizing the government for in fact giving concessions to the rich, which are balanced by the total tax that is taken from the oil companies. And that's a different balancing act.
I was only responding to Kaushik's argument that the government requires revenues. Don't tax these products. You don't give concessions there. You have the revenue. You have the same revenue.
Dr. Basu, let me raise the central issue by citing an example which many consider a very clever example in that document published by the CPM. They say, for example, suppose a pair of shoes is imported from Italy and costs 1,000 rupees. But if you import the leather and make the shoe in India, the cost is only 600. How then can the company claim that on the basis of import parity pricing, its actual cost is 1,000? It's not, it's 600.
Yeah. So, Karan, I'm going to answer that. And I think what Sitaram is raising over here is a matter of income tax, whether it should be higher or lower. That's another debate. I mean, if that's the defense of petroleum, let's not get sidetracked on that debate. So I don't want to get sidetracked. So I want to come back to exactly this. Right now, the trouble is, market price is not a terribly meaningful thing in the oil sector because it is dominated by public sector firms. And I do think public sector firms should play an important role. Right now, we have to take a benchmark somewhere and fix the price. But do it in a manner, and the first steps have been taken, whereby there will be a bigger play of the private sector. And prices will come down because that will be market price. You don't have to take a benchmark from international prices. There will be competition over here that will fix the price.